Coming up this week on the Markcast, well, we are not trying to steal the Declaration of Independence.
I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence.
But we are searching for a hidden football talent with Nicolas Cage of National Treasure. Really eclectic show this week. Emory Hunt, CBS Sports contributor, stopping by, sharing his knowledge and expertise on the spring football landscape. We're talking XFL v USFL, player scouting, recruiting, and what these leagues can do to be developmental leagues whilst still maintaining some semblance of entertaining football for fans trying to watch.
Both leagues, I hope, think this through. You're not going to compete with the NFL. You have to find a way to compete not only with each other, but for the fans' interest. And if you just are a turnstile league where guys are coming in and out, you really can't build that equity up. You can't forecast, you can't do anything in terms of what you want to grow. Fantasy, sports betting, all that stuff. You need to know who's going to be on the team every year to forecast and stuff like that. And a revolving door doesn't accomplish that goal.
Then Eric Merrida of FA Showcase is stopping by the show. Eric is part of the free agent player showcase happening in Sugar Land, Texas next week. We're talking, alt football, the need to have these showcases, helping players get into leagues like the CFL, XFL, USFL, and why it is so important to give these players that maybe would be overlooked otherwise a shot to compete to get roster spots.
The opportunities are so limited, and most players, if they're given a fair shot to see if they're good enough, they would be willing to accept it if they didn't make it. But they can't accept if they never get that opportunity.
And then David Boles, sideline reporter for the Edmonton Elks, is joining us, having lots of CFL talk as well this week with a loaded CFL. Are we at week 14 now? What is happening in this world? And finally, where the heck are our XFL announcements? The NFL season is kicking off, for gosh sake. Can somebody tell me where are the XFL announcements?
It's a very big, fluffy fun.
Where's the beef?
Should be a good show. Thanks as always. Take care. Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast. Reed here. Really fun show this week. Happy NFL kickoff day to everybody. I already tweeted, everyone is coming out of the woodwork. Football is back. We have CFL fans. I've been watching football for 3 months. Well, USFL fans have been watching football since April. So, let's call a spade a spade. Really happy. I am an NFL fan. I have my Washington Commanders hat on today. Really happy that the NFL season is back. I do very much enjoy my time on the weekends watching the NFL. Coincides much better with my work life than the USFL does, having weekend games in June and July when I'm off filming weddings. But thank you guys all so much for joining today. Please like and subscribe. Remember, we have our big Brian Scott autograph to football. I need to mail that. I have about 16 hard drives for wedding clients, and then Brian Scott's football I need to mail to him to get signed. But if you are part of our 2,500 subscriber giveaway, we're about 300 and change away from that right now. That could be yours, as well as some other choice items. So please like and subscribe. Help the channel grow. Really appreciate everyone being here. As I mentioned off the top, Emory Hunt, wonderful guest today, extended with Emory about 45 minutes. Really appreciate him taking time. He said, I've got the NFL season coming up and college football and everything. This is literally like the one day that I can record and come on the show. And I said, well, that sounds like a wonderful day to have you on. I really appreciate Emory taking the time out of his busy schedule to come on. But I thought a really fruitful conversation. We're kind of going down this road right now of XFL, USFL kind of maintaining, we have to be an entertaining football league, but then we're also developing players. What players should the XFL be targeting ahead of the 2023 season? What players should the USFL be targeting? Emory also said, very different players, right? I'm trying to remember what all we talked about, recorded a few days ago, but, USFL should be targeting very different players than the XFL. And I thought that was interesting. Emory is a draft analyst, been doing it for years, scouting players like that. So I thought Emory has a wealth of knowledge just in terms of yes, both of these leagues are existing in the spring, but Both of them are looking for potentially, or should be, if Emory has anything to say about it, kind of very different types of players for each of those leagues. So really curious to hear what you guys think about that. Really appreciate Eric Merrida coming by today as well. Eric is part of the FA Showcase next week. John Murphy, former CFL exec, part of that as well. Scouts coming out from CFL, USFL. Little cagey, Eric, if XFL scouts are going to be there, but really excited for that. Giving players an opportunity that maybe missed out on the XFL player showcases. I know they're doing the specialist showcase coming up in October. I think there's going to be another XFL showcase as well here in the fall. But there's just a tremendous amount of players that are working and wanting to get opportunities. And I think this is great. Things like this, and hopefully they do other showcases here in the future, depending on players and locations and things like that. But, $100 to show up, get your tape, and get seen by scouts from different leagues. Like I said, I get messaged all the time from players on Twitter like, hey, share my tape and, send it here and send it there. Like, I don't know what that does. I think this maybe would put you in a better opportunity for that. So I really appreciate the work that Eric and John, everybody there is doing with the free agent player showcase. And then we have David Boles coming on. David, sideline reporter for the Edmonton Elks. We're getting our CFL fix this week. I was on the Alouettes Flight Deck podcast that aired, came out either Wednesday night, Thursday morning as you listen to this on Friday. We previewed the big BC Lions at Montreal game this weekend, potentially with Vernon Adams, starting again, or at least getting playing time against his former team. Really appreciate Tim and Cliffy having me on there, but we'll have David on today, having lots of CFL talk. What is going on in Edmonton? I'm sure David will have lots of thoughts on everything. CFL Week 14 here, quickly approaching November, and the Grey Cup in Regina, which I am terrified about just because of the weather is going to be up there. Finally, I was going to label the episode something else today, but I thought the hidden treasure and Nick Cage and all that was kind of funny, searching for football talent. But where are the XFL announcements?
It's a very big, fluffy fun.
Where's the beef?
Like, seriously, I want to hear what you guys think. Like, I just don't know if the NFL media landscape, the casual fan, has the the bandwidth to kind of process. Okay, we've got the NFL. It's so all-encompassing. It's been going on for weeks now, leading up. Now that we're hitting, like I've said before in the past, already kind of hitting the wall with certain, NFL reporters or people that would be covering both leagues, just trying to get them to come on to talk XFL, just because the NFL is so all-encompassing. Really thought we were going to get team names. I know there was like a rumor going around here coming up. I don't see them running anything for a while now, the XFL, just with the NFL season starting. I thought last week was a good window for them, but really curious what you guys think. Not is there enough time, but like I said, is there enough bandwidth? Is there enough, are we going to be doing November events like we did before? I know that we did one outside of CenturyLink Field, now Lumen Field for the Dragons. I'll just be curious to see how all this balances out here in the next couple months. ESPN obviously focusing on the NFL. Like, okay, we give airtime to the XFL. Is that enough? Or are we doing stuff on Monday for Monday Night Football? The big Russell Wilson return to Seattle. Like, do we get some announcements on ESPN there? Like, I don't know. Really curious to see what you guys think. But where's the beef? Where's the XFL? Where's the XFL announcements? Thought that was funny. Maybe not funny enough to carry a whole episode titled this week, just with all the great insights that Eric and Emory brought just in terms of the XFL, USFL debate. But really, just thought that was funny. And I would really like your comments and help build that YouTube algorithm. Let me know where are the XFL announcements? What do we have going on there? Thank you guys all so much for your support. Please like and subscribe. Get us up to 2,500. Hopefully here, I would like to before the XFL season, and nothing else, but certainly in the meantime couldn't hurt as well. I'll be by at the end of the show to say goodbye. If there's any feature read updates, recording this earlier today, the lighting's all weird. So we'll see if I have any breaking news later today, but thank you all so much. Take care. Well, when I announced to my cohort of people I talked to online that this gentleman was coming on, they said, well, he is a genius. So no short of praise for Emory Hunt coming on today. I really appreciate you. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine, man. As always, I appreciate, the opportunity to be on. I watch the show every Friday. Sometimes when I'm on a treadmill, sometimes I listen while I'm driving out to a school or wherever I'm headed to scout or whatnot. So I always am a fan of your show. and you do great work.
Well, I appreciate it. So we have Emory Hunt here, CBS Sports, tons of other stuff. I was kind of researching, and I added you on LinkedIn and everything today, kind of going through all that. For anyone that maybe doesn't know who you are, what's kind of your elevator pitch for what you have going on?
Well, I'm a football analyst, so you'll see me cover football from all levels, whether it's high school, women's tackle football, NFL, college, USFL, XFL, all of that. I've been all around and got my start on YouTube back in 2009 when no one was doing YouTube, was doing podcasts when no one was doing podcasts, and when it was seen as a knock. But now you fast forward to 2022, everybody's on YouTube and everybody has a podcast. So I like to say I was on the forefront of that. So I'm a color analyst, all that good stuff. So you'll see me talk football pretty much everywhere.
Well, that's great. So we're here. I was trying to kind of produce the show last week. We're talking the NFL cuts, players, made it to the NFL, didn't from USFL and all of that. I guess first off, 51 guys were signed originally from the USFL. Cavante Turpin obviously made it on. Abernathy, I think, got brought back onto the practice squad. I think it's like so hard trying to track all this week to week. But what did you make just of the USFL to NFL transition and kind of how that all wound up with the number of players and the timeline of the league and all that?
I thought it was good that they were announcing that guys were getting signed, because all that was to me was a recruiting pitch for 2023. Like, hey, man, we had all these guys that played in our league that are going to go into the NFL. Now, granted, they were just going to go and be, part of the camp roster, the 90-man roster, as we saw the subsequent cuts. And, Abernathy made the team for a day. And then we know Turpin signed an extension with the Cowboys, a 3-year deal, and Odom would have made the team. So for me, it's great recruiting because we know a lot of guys always wanted that opportunity. But I feel like now going into 2023, and this has been my philosophy from Jump Street, you have to really start to make your own stars and make your league where you want to be and make it a viable option and destination. So, it's great that guys are going to leave and go to the NFL, but you want your stars to stay and you want your guys to be known as a USFL football player and have that be an option for guys coming out of college. And so that's why it's going to be fascinating to watch this whole recruiting process for both the USFL and XFL this upcoming season, because and I always use this as an example. For instance, if I'm Stetson Bennett, I'm not wasting time going through this whole NFL process of the combine and pro days, knowing good and damn well the NFL is not going to give me a real opportunity. As soon as my college bowl game is over, I am going to either the XFL or USFL and rock in there and then let the league reevaluate me like they did Turpin from this alternate league. And so there's another, let's say if I'm a DJ Uiagalelei, who was gangbusters as a freshman, wasn't so good last year. And if this year he gets beat out by Klubnik, the hotshot 5-star prospect, why would I hit the transfer portal? Why would I go play college ball at another school? I'm going to leave, join the XFL or USFL, play pro ball versus pro talent, and then let the league reevaluate me from there. If I was JT Daniels, I wouldn't have gone to West Virginia. I would have jumped in the XFL, USFL. So that's the place I feel like the league, both leagues can really, stake a claim and have, some ownership. Now, on the flip side, it's going to cost, higher salaries because guys will, like Abernathy, hang on the practice squad, make about 6 figures. You can't tell someone don't take that money when you're making whatever the salaries were in the USFL or in the XFL. So it's going to, maybe in a couple of years, it can raise to where the practice squad salaries are. And that'll be the key to where they can then make a decision. Hey, if I'm a Stetson Bennett, okay, cool. I know I'm not going to the NFL. I'm going to the USFL or XFL and I can make 6 figures and play ball.
It's hard. We had a couple weeks ago is like the identity crisis of spring football because, like we talked with the coach back then. You said you were at the DC showcase. We went down to the Arizona one and he said, the biggest highlight for me would be if every single player on my team went to an NFL roster. Now, obviously we saw a lot of those players didn't latch on, right? But if that is still the goal of your league, if we're proudly in the USFL, where we have all these different guys and look at all these people we're signed, like I just don't understand. I don't know if that is, and here I am, someone covering all this stuff, but I just don't know if that's enough to get people to buy into your league.
It would be if. Now, here's the big if. Your whole philosophy has to change. If that's going to be your goal of our guys going to the NFL, you sound like a college football team, right? So what you will have to do then is start attacking the transfer portal or opening things up to these redshirt sophomores or sophomores to come to your league, kind of like the Kenny Robinson did with the XFL, with the Battlehawks. So you get those guys to come in, play a year, and then get drafted. That's great. But if you want some guys, you want veteran guys to have a place, because we know this football. You can't. There's no rec football league. You only have to play full contact football in leagues, and there's a place for the Chase Daniel. Granted, he's making bank as a backup in the NFL, but I'm pretty sure deep down, if you ask him in a moment of clarity, man, I want to start, man, this would have been the perfect league for him. Or someone that maybe has phased out of the NFL, that, let's say, like a Deshaun Kaiser. I would have loved to see Kaiser in the XFL or USFL, just play ball. Now, I know he's moved on from football, but that's the type of league this can be for someone to just play ball and be a Josh Johnson and thrive in an alternate league where you could just get starts and just rack up yards and just play. But if you're hell bent on being, hey, we want our guys to go to the NFL, then you got to change your approach. There's so many kids in that transfer portal now. Go get those guys, let them play in your league, develop pro, and then, you could lose 25 guys to the NFL because they're now young enough that the NFL is about talent, but it's also about youth. And youth, in parentheses, equals cheap. So they want the cheap young guys that they can get. So you're going to have a change in philosophy if that's going to be the approach.
Well, and I went to Gonzaga, so my college football, my wife went to UW, so she's a little bit more locked into all that kind of stuff. But I don't buy into that as much, right? Buying into the program, right, and not the players. But we had a lot of people write into the show, and they said, this is destroying my Birmingham Stallions, or this is destroying, and I'm like, well, I don't really think they care. They're the Birmingham side. I think they want to go get paid. But you have a mix of fans watching these new leagues where they're not all into, like you said, that college. Okay, we get a good player for 2-3 years, see him move on, get a new. We buy more into the system and the franchise of the school and that legacy than necessarily the players themselves.
Yeah, it's tough because that's why I never also like the approach where, and you see this every time a spring league or an alt league joins. Oh, if this team is in Birmingham, just get a bunch of players from Alabama or local colleges. Like, you really think people don't understand? Fans don't care that much. If a kid they just want to see guys win. They don't care that, I'm going to watch the Baton Rouge Barracudas because they have a lot of players from LSU. No. If that was the case, then Birmingham would have had a bunch of guys from the state of Alabama, and those games would have sold 60,000 tickets easily, right? No one cares. No one is not that serious. You know what I'm saying? So you have to just get good players. Pro is different than college. Pro, you get good players, and you understand you're going to lose a few. But for these leagues, I feel like it's really important that they find and develop their own. If you're going to have a foundational base of guys that are not going to the NFL. And I'm not saying this as a knock, but you can find some quality professional player type guys at the Division II level, also at the Division III level. And you can then add some of these guys that are going to turn over and go pro. So you can get those guys that are, off the practice squad that will get another call up to go pro. But if you can have a base of guys that will live in the USFL, live in the XFL, then you can get the fan buy-in. Let's say and I'm using this just as an example, someone like a Bailey Gaither, right? May not have the best opportunity to go to the NFL game. I know he was one of those guys that got picked up, but let's say he's going to be a guy that's going to be a foundational guy. Fans in Pittsburgh can count on Bailey Gaither being there. Now, you add in your guys that's going to, your Carlo Kemps or those players are going to end up on rosters like a Boogie Roberts. You have him in Pittsburgh. You have core guys going to be there, and then you could have your revolving door guys. But, they really got to, both leagues, I hope, think this through. You're not going to compete with the NFL. You have to find a way to compete, not only with each other, but for the fans' interest. And if you just are a turnstile league where guys are coming in and out, you really can't build that equity of, you can't forecast, you can't do anything in terms of what you want to grow, fantasy, sports betting, all that stuff. You need to know who's going to be on the team every year to forecast and stuff like that. And a revolving door doesn't accomplish that goal.
It's kind of like, I don't know if you watch WWE and like you have NXT, right? And NXT exists. That's like the developmental league. But they also have their own TV show. So they have to be able to have some guys that they're paying there that, you know, maybe will get overlooked on the main roster, right? So they pay up a little bit. They kind of hold the titles and then they have everyone else come in. Because it's the same. I mean, I'm just thinking as you talk, it's the same kind of thing. We have to exist on our own, you know, draw people to watch our show every week, but then also know that a lot of these guys aren't going to be here more than, in that case, they might be there 6 months a year and they really bust off and they go up. So I think that's a good, I don't know anyone, we have a lot of wrestling fans on the show, but I think that's a good comparison. That, you know, XFL is like the NXT, which obviously Vince McMahon and everything else in that as well.
You have to, and it's entertainment value too. And I'm never going to call for anyone's job as a coach because I know how hard it is to get one of those jobs. But just for sheer entertainment value, people tuned into Pittsburgh to see what Kirby Wilson was going to do next. So that has value, right? People tuned into, Generals games because he was like, man, Coach Riley is playing a quarterback every other play. We hadn't seen that since Tim Tebow and Chris Leak. So it's like, wow, like let's see what's going to happen next. And if you think in terms of entertainment value, Kirby Wilson has value. The style of play has value. And to build on that, it makes people watch the league. You know, it's the Howard Stern effect. People are going to tune in. People say they hate Howard Stern, but they're his most loyal listeners. You know what I'm saying? So people wanted to clown Kirby Wilson, but guess what? I'm pretty sure those Pittsburgh Mauler games that were on the middle of the day were prime TV, you know what I'm saying? So there's value there. And to your point, it's a great analogy about wrestling. You have to have, you know, if you're going to have a minor league or a developmental league, but you have to develop your own cast of characters, so to speak. It was
Kirby Wilson, the Mad King, Kirby Wilson. That was what I called him by the end. I mean, what did you make USFL season 1 here? Well, season 1, not really 1, but the inaugural season of Fox Sports USFL.
I thought it was great, man. And there's pieces that was great. Now, granted, you talking to a football guy, meat and potatoes guy. So obviously I'm going to think the football was great because plus from a scouting perspective, and this is why I was frustrated with a lot of draft Twitter. It's like, man, you spend God knows how many amount of time scouting all these players. And you should be all in on the USFL and XFL. These are the dudes that you spent, in a wild amount of time on Twitter talking about. Here is your guy now playing. And so even as a scout, I'm like, listen, every time somebody make a play, I'm throwing up a scouting report from my draft guy. Oh yeah, here's so-and-so for the Generals that just made a play, or so-and-so for the Stars. Here's what I had on them back in 2016 or whatnot. So from a scouting perspective, I loved it because you finally get to see these guys that you like play. And also we saw fresh ideas from coaches. We get to see a Kirby Wilson, how he runs a team. We get to see a Skip Holtz and how he runs his team. We get to see Mike Riley, who's the perfect coach, a coach's coach, Mike Riley, right? So I love all of those aspects of it. The TV-wise, being in TV, I understood why they had to do what they did with the hub. I thought Fox's production was better than NBC's production. But I like the combination of Collinsworth and Jason Garrett more so than some of the Fox guys, even though I do like Joe Klatt but I like when guys are invested in the league. I felt like Joe Klatt was invested. I felt like Jason Garrett and Jack Collinsworth were invested. Other guys they were throwing in, I just felt like, they just kind of watched. This was the first time they heard of this event. They just showed up and they threw a mic in their face and it was like, hey, be a sideline reporter for this game. Like, hey, man, this guy knows how to put it on his equipment. Like, yeah, it's a football player, right? So I just like the fact that guys were invested. I love the football aspect of it. And I understood the business part of why they did what they did. So now I am looking forward to seeing what both can do in year 2, because I think there are going to be some unique opportunities and challenges for both, but it can happen. And the fact that we got through a full season, I know we've done that with the Spring League. I know we've done that with the UFL. I'm excited. And I know we've done it with the XFL. I used to be at those Brooklyn Bolt games and the Boston Breakers games up at Harvard Stadium. So the fact that we got through a full season, people got to watch it, and now they're anticipating coming back for year two. I'm talking about the fans and the restart of the XFL 3.0. I think it's a great time. And there are some things that you could look at and knock. Obviously, fan engagement, but it's going to be hard to. I guarantee you this: if the first hub of the USFL was in New Orleans or in Florida or in Charlotte or anywhere other than Birmingham, it's not easy to get to Birmingham. And so in Birmingham, hey, man, we about to go take a trip to Birmingham. Like, what? Like, no. So you never hear that coming from anyone's mouth. And no slight to Birmingham, but it is what it is. So if they're like with the hub that's going to have the pseudo hub that's going to happen in the XFL, it's easy to sell me on Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington area. It's so much easy to get into. A lot of fights going in and out. So if I wanted to fly down from Jersey, catch a game in Arlington, I could do that. It would have been hell and high water to get down to Birmingham. And you know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's the only knock. I felt like they could have picked a better host city. I felt like New Orleans would have been perfect, especially when you see how good the Breakers were. So that crowd would have been vested. New Orleans loves a winner. I'm from New Orleans. I know what that was like when my senior year in high school was the year Tulane went undefeated. And I remember I was getting recruited by Tulane, and they played in the Superdome, and it was a cavernous 70,000 seat stadium with like 700 people at the game. But then they started winning, and next thing you know, everybody's going to Tulane games. You saw people arguing in barbershops. I've been a Tulane fan. Like, man, shut up, man. You even knew the school existed 2 months ago. So I felt like if they can find those, they talked about a second hub. If they can, let New Orleans play New Orleans, which is not too far from Birmingham, and maybe develop a hub out in, Philly or Jersey somewhere, I feel like they can have a chance to get that fan engagement to get better than what we saw in Birmingham, because more people will be willing to travel to major cities as opposed to smaller ones.
It's just hard. Like, well, first off, Mike Robb, if you're saying Mike Robb maybe wasn't all invested on the broadcast, I would agree with that. I was trying to get Mike Robb on the show. I'm like, I'm a Seahawk guy, I'm from Seahawk. I think but like Collinsworth and Garrett and stuff, I mean, you saw they were
Burmeister was good too. I want to give Burmeister a shout out. He was good. And also Heward is always vested in. I love the way when you get guys that are vested in, they make the experience better.
Brock was all in, but you get like, because Garrett and Collinsworth, right, are doing the Notre Dame games or whatever. I mean, but they looked at it too, like they got it. Hey, this is our shot to get to the next shot. We got to get up on that. I mean, the thing, Birmingham gave them such a sweetheart deal, right? The USFL, and we've had various reports coming out of that with Roy Johnson in there, and the like what the league is paying and what they're getting paid back and all of that. But basically, being able to use that stadium for free for 10 weeks is I don't know if you're getting the Superdome or whatever for 10 weeks, or if you want that. And there was I don't know. And I've talked about this before, but we add a second hub. I don't know if that is of interest to the like. Are you getting a lot more casual fans if it's like, oh, the USFL is playing in 2 markets now? Like, I don't know. I'm concerned about that.
It depends, and you have a right to be concerned because it is an issue. People hear hubs and they think pandemic, and we know in some spots people feel like the pandemic is over. In some spots, some people feel like the pandemic just started. Right, so we get the whole negative connotation the hub has, but you have to find cities where people are going to go to it. I was more disappointed in the fact that Birmingham, and maybe because they've been burned before, that they didn't fully sell out that stadium because, like, man, this is your pro team. You can explain away people not showing. And this was what I always loved, right? Because we had a TV show for the XFL 2020 when it was out. And so I was at Guardians practices and Guardian games. And as much as people, the average person on Twitter tune in on the USFL games, oh, there's nobody in the stands. Bro, y'all wasn't going to Guardians games. Nobody was going to these games. Y'all was complaining about 17,000 in the stands for DC or the Guardians or Seattle. And it said, well, it's not 50,000. See, nobody really likes it. They only got 17,000. That shows you that. But now 17,000 for the USFL was a big problem. You know what I'm saying? It's like, there's only 17. Like, so Twitter is not a real place. And so people just love to jump in and hate, but it shows you that no one cares in this country about soccer. No one cares in this country about any other sport other than football. People will watch football regardless. So I said all that to say, if they are in like certain places, I think if they want to keep costs down, drivable distances are perfect. So you can put New Orleans in New Orleans. You can kind of steal what the XFL is doing. All right, your house can be in Birmingham. New Orleans is not but a short drive away. So is Houston. And if this would have been the perfect time to I thought this offseason to add Memphis, to add another team up north, maybe DC, the Washington Federals, or something like that. Because now you put 3 teams within drivable distance, or maybe move the Federals to Baltimore. You still within Philly, Jersey, Baltimore. That's drivable distance. Pittsburgh, 6 hours, 5.5. If you hit Route 80 really hard, and if you look at New Orleans, Houston, Memphis, and Tampa, that's travelable distances that can help you keep costs down. And I think if you want to generate like a bus league, you could do that. I feel like the Michigan Panthers are a standalone, out there in Detroit. But I felt like, if you, we talked about this earlier in the spring on my USFL show, was, all right, if you're going to expand, build around these cities. I don't know if they burn bridges in Indy, but Indy would have been perfect with Detroit, because you could have now added Canton, Ohio, Indy, Louisville, in Columbus, and you'd have been right there so you could have a hub, which would have been, let's say, Detroit, and then you could then disperse those teams to their local market. So they gotta be strategic in how they expand in these markets, but it can be done without fully going into each individual market and spending 8, whatever salaries you're spending per team times 8. You know what I mean? So I feel like they can do a non-hub 2023 season. They got to make sure, they put these teams where they need to be so people can get to them.
I'll die on my sword that they should have just, at least this first season, just called them the generals and the breakers. and I've posted on Twitter. I've had people yell at me, but I said, at least for this first season, now we have the lawsuit figured out. Now we know what we can promote. We've got that all settled. I would have called season 1. You can call them the Birmingham Stallions if you want, but I would have had the Stallions. Now we could, because then you can figure out wherever you want to go. Maybe we don't want to go to Michigan. I mean, Jake's head is exploding right now, but maybe we don't want to go there. Maybe we want to go somewhere else. But I think it allows you a lot more flexibility. Going back to the attendance, I just saw Jim Mullen, who's one of our friends, President Football Canada, talking, because over the weekend there was like CFL attendance and whatever. Even baseball right now, I think he was saying the Rays were playing the Yankees or something. They were only getting 17,000 fans. I mean, it's across the board right now that there's not. But why, going back to when you were talking about your scouting guys not caring about these players, right, when hey, we followed them, now they didn't make it to the end. Why do you think that is? Why do you think when they hit the USFL, you don't have more of the people that have been tracking these guys for the last 5 years?
Reed, that is a fantastic question. I'm glad you asked me.
Took me a long time to get there.
Because here's my biggest pet peeve with these dudes, man. And a lot of them are my friends, but you talk tough to your friends because you want them to do right. A lot of these guys want to be Mel Kiper. They want to be Todd McShay. So they only want to talk about the guys at the big schools, the top 5 guys. And it makes them feel like they are. I'm in the same boat with Mel Kiper and Todd McShay. Look where I have. They all rearranged the top 5, right? So if my top 5 quarterbacks are A, B, and C, okay, mine may be B, yours may be A. And so, but they still talk about the same 5 guys, right? Here, if you really want to stand out as a analyst or as a scout, media scout, draft scout, whatever, and that's where I cut my teeth. You got to be able to stand out on your own. I was probably the only one that had a first round grade on Russell Wilson. I also told people Tariq Cohen was going to be awesome, but everybody kept saying he's from North Carolina A&T. I told people that year he came out in the draft, I had a higher grade on P.J. Walker than Mitch Trubisky. Now, if P.J. Walker gets a true opportunity, if he got one coming out of college, we would have seen NFL P.J. Walker look like XFL 2020 P.J. Walker, right? So, but I feel like a lot of guys in the draft media space are afraid to have their own opinions. They like to think they do, afraid to have their own opinions, but they also, if Kuiper and McShay were talking about the USFL, they would then talk about the USFL. But you should be talking about it because you have hundreds of scouting reports, and a lot of those guys are not on the NFL roster. A lot of these guys are going to be in the XFL and USFL, and that's where you show, hey, my scouting report was right. He just didn't get an opportunity to go in the NFL. So they should be watching these games. They should be more invested. Hell, if I know I'm trying hard to, as a color analyst, put me on the game. I know these players better than, the guys you dropping in. And I know it's network based, but still, like, hey, if you're going to cover these games, I'm going to talk about that. Bring me on to talk about it. I know I brought that up to, CBS a lot of times, like, hey, especially in the spring, because, you got all different sports, and then they had that lull where there's nothing really. I'm like, hey, man, y'all want content, bring me on to talk about USFL. Cool. All right, here's a segment about the USFL. Boom. Because now they have someone they can go to. But that's why I don't understand why they don't want to dive into this league. When I was at the showcase, I don't know how it was when you got down there, because you was probably on the sixth showcase I think you went to.
It was right before the Dallas and then the big blowout with the city reveal. So we were at the Arizona one, the Friday before or something.
Oh, okay. So let me know how it was there for you, because when I was at DC, I was the only media person. It's like, so I'm sitting there and so I was talking with the media relations girl, and she was like, we're having a conversation about the whole thing. And like 15 players, yo, Emory, what's up? Yo, Emory, oh, it's good to see you. Players that I scouted at, these smaller schools that are working out the showcase. She's like, damn, everybody. I'm like, well, I'm always around. Like, these are the dudes that I've spent time talking about. And I was shocked because, again, you would think you'd see more people there that are in this space. But I was just shocked. So I'm always disappointed that these guys are not taking the opportunity to really, show their stuff by being at these alternate football leagues and games.
Yeah, no, it was just us. It was the Newsome guys, and keep in mind, we all had, paid our own way to fly down. I flew from Seattle down because that was the closest one. I know, like Evan, I think just did a day trip, flew from San Diego. But yeah, and then there was one local Arizona newspaper reporter there. And that was it. And like, I was surprised and I knew the Arizona one wasn't going to be whatever, but you could tell that he didn't have a lot of, like, he's just covering it because this is like, hey, it's in the city, and like, we had a little bit more like, what offense are you going to run? Bob Stoops. I mean, it was a little bit more like that kind of stuff because, and that's concern. I mean, that's a conversation for another day of should we have more media caring about the XFL right now in August, headed in. But what I was going to say, I totally lost. You talk about the media guys, like you even have Colin Cowherd, right? Like Colin's on Fox, and he had said, like, I am going to cover USFL all season. There's nothing to talk about. I don't want to talk about baseball. Like, I'm going to talk about USFL all season. And then what did he do? He did minute readers that they provided him Monday mornings, and like he wasn't invested. And I'm like, this is your face on your network that is announced. Like, he couldn't care less to talk about it. Skip and Shannon aren't watching the games. Like, you even have people on their own networks that are carrying the league that don't care about it.
It's so frustrating to watch too, especially when you have such a big star like Kevontae Turpin. And when he gets to the Cowboys, people are like, where did he come from? Like, bro, we've been talking about this dude all spring. What you mean where he came from? And when you see the viral plays, you see the Corbins, how many big runs will this dude have to have for you to take, man, why is he not in the game? And you kind of love to see how people really latched on to certain teams. Like toward the end, they sort of latch on to, man, the Stars really got better when they put, Cookus in the game, and you saw people start to get a little bit more invested in the receivers or how big they are. And, they really have the tallest group across the board. New Orleans got a little bit of a buzz early on in the season with Jonathan Adams had the viral catch and all this, their offense. But I just found it's almost a slap in the face too. And you see it be a slap in the face and I feel the same way about how they cover these leagues with how they butcher preseason football at the NFL level. It's like, bro, get a draft analyst as the third person, in your broadcast booth and have someone. It's because because they only want to talk about the first quarter when the starters play for 9 plays, but the majority of the broadcast, they're still talking about the season projection. They're still talking about the starter. Man, tell me who is this dude from Mercyhurst that's killing the defense right now? Let me know about him. That's where a guy that, is vested in preseason football, the back end roster guy, would have been, oh, yeah, I was at the game where Garrett Owens ran through Slippery Rock for 200-something yards. Yeah, he has X, Y, and Z trait, and this is how he can project to the Eagles roster or whatnot. So I hate it, too, because people do that for preseason football. They do it for Group of 5 football and college football. They do it for FCS football, and they do it for these alternate leagues. There's guys like yourself, like myself, that are out there that are, fascinated by this, that want to cover it, that can provide real analysis and real content. Lean into those guys, man. So therefore, you don't have to fake like you like this stuff and read these readers. Like, hey, if I'm Colin Cowherd, if I could bring Reed in to, weekly to talk USFL and just lob softballs to him, I'm gonna do that. That's less I gotta do. That's just good business and good radio.
I don't want to disparage anyone. There are some people that are in the USFL brass that I've seen on Twitter and stuff here, like since all the signings, and I think they really bought in. Damn it, spring football and these players. I'm like, you have been at this for 6 months. I have done this show 3 years, have never had an XFL game to cover. Mike Mitchell's been covering this stuff his entire life. We have all these guys running the sites. Welcome to the party. I'm glad that but I saw a lot of them this is the best place, and these players deserve. I'm like, yeah, you just walked up to the show. I'm so glad that you are aware of what a lot of people are aware of now. So that's good. I'm glad, but it took you a while. So.
That I find it in the scouting element too. Like when I remember this was when I first started going to games scouting in 2013, and I was at a Yale Cornell game, and I'm like, yo, this Cornell quarterback is freaking awesome. He clearly is playing pro level ball, and it was Jeff Matthews. So I'm talking about Jeff. I'm like, man, Cornell has a live one out here throwing the hell out of the football. So I followed him throughout the season, followed him into next season. I threw him in my preseason quarterback rankings. I think I had him 10th or whatnot, just to throw him in there so people could get familiar. He goes to the Shrine Bowl that year, killing it in practice. This was the year Jimmy Garoppolo was there, killing it in practice. And all people talked about was, man, where did this kid from Cornell come from? Who? They just really just plucked somebody. No, they didn't pluck somebody out of thin air. Because when I was there was 3 scouts from NFL teams there watching the same dude. And and that's the stuff that really, frustrates, because you get these people that just jump into stuff. They'll jump in for a game and they work for major outlets. They'll jump in, see no one in the stands without understanding that it's a hub city and it's not Birmingham playing, then go on their major outlet and write, no one's watching the USFL, when that's contrary to, to the truth. Or they'll jump into, see so-and-so play. Well, if he plays like this, he's playing against USFL talent. Well, what's his backstory? John Q. reporter, dig into his, find out why he's there and maybe do something on him about why he's embracing his opportunity being there. So it's just, I hate when the fly-by-night people jump in, because everybody wants to talk about NFL and major college football, and everything else is beneath them.
I got 2 more questions for you. I don't want to keep you too long. I know I promised, but this is good. I really, really appreciate it. In terms of USFL guys that didn't maybe make it on this year that you thought would, any surprise? I mean, obviously Turpin, everyone was going crazy about, but anyone where you were surprised that didn't get signed on and go into the practice squad or not making it at all?
I thought Corbin had a great opportunity to, because of the running he was doing, And it made you frustrated that, man, like, why is he not getting the football? I feel like every time he touches the ball, it's a big play. Why are we giving Stevie Scott the ball when this dude clearly is breaking all these long runs? So I thought he would have had an opportunity because he has the breakaway speed. I felt like Cookis would have been there had it not been for the injury, because he had the athleticism. He is more athletic than Kyle Sloter, had a stronger arm, was much more decisive in throwing the ball downfield. He was playing above the X's and O's, so he was finding a way to make a way. I thought Cookis would have been. I hate that he got hurt in that game, because they would have won the championship, in my opinion. But also, he would have got that opportunity to play in preseason ball and would have probably thrived. So to me, it was those two guys. I'm glad DeMarcus Gates got an opportunity. I'm glad Odom got an opportunity. I'm glad Stribling got an opportunity. Because every time I look up, he had the football in his hand and he played defense. So that's that seems like important. So I felt like those guys. But it's on the flip side, I wish guys like Cole Kelly, who ended up going to the Commanders out of Southeast Louisiana, the big 6'7" quarterback. I kind of wish he would have, went to the USFL and played there. I wish Eric Berry would have started writing on the wall initially and jumped in right out of the gate, like Warren Saba did. He bypassed the NFL draft and jumped into the USFL, got drafted, but he got hurt, I think, the first play of the game in week 1. So I wish more guys going, kind of spinning it forward. I wish they look at, hey, man, just be honest with yourself. I know I'm coming from a small school. I know I'm what the league doesn't look for at insert position here. I'm not going to get frustrated with this process and hope I get drafted in, the 6th or 7th round. I'm going to just go play ball in the spring and then re-enter the draft that way. But I really thought Corbin, Cookis, and who else? I thought Corbin, Cookis, and those two really just initially stood out as guys that I thought would have gotten. I know he's older, but Toby Johnson was a monster up front, and people need big bodies, and there's not a lot of big bodies walking around the earth that have athleticism that can stop the run. And he was one of those guys, so I thought he would have got an opportunity too.
Last question today. We'll have to have you back on. I really appreciate it. XFL coming back, USFL, these guys, you've been to the showcase, covered USFL, all this stuff. How is the XFL going to compete in terms of getting the talent? How do you, and I don't, people just, well, it's The Rock. People want to go play with The Rock. But I mean, if I'm someone, and I've gone back and forth, but if I hey, USFL completed the season, they got paid, everyone got paid, we're coming back. We know what that is. XFL, they're spending all this money, doing everything. What do you make of them now trying to compete, and how you think it's going to look here through the rest of the year, come into the spring?
I think, and that's a great question. I think both leagues can operate separately from each other, and both have enough talent to where both can be good football and watchable football on television. And so what I've seen from the XFL, I know they have boots on the ground scouts, and I know a lot of the scouts are the director of player personnel for each team. Great guys they got, and I know they're out there on the ground. So I know they know what talent looks like. A lot of these guys worked at All-Star games too. So they know how to judge pro talent. So that I'm not worried about the talent inflection. And I'm also not worried about the time frame too, because I think both work. If you are, let me break it down for you. If you are a rookie, like I've been saying all show, or a guy coming in, if you're a Stetson Bennett, the XFL would be great for you, because their season starts right after your season, and they finish right before the draft. So, but if you're a guy that's, been on your 3rd or 4th practice squad, and you're tired of getting cut and tired of, waiting by the phone and every week to hope that you could still stay on the practice squad and not get released from the practice squad, because that could happen at any time and they owe you nothing, then the USFL will be the best option for you, because you can now play during the late summer or late spring, early summer months, and then get, your opportunity to go and play in the NFL. So I feel like the young veteran, USFL would be the great option. The fresh out of college, maybe XFL would be the best option. Both can pull from the transfer portal and take those kids. But I feel like if you're younger, you can go to the XFL and be back in time for the draft. if you're, someone like a Stribling who was on teams, but he kept getting cut, like, man, let me go play ball. I want to play ball. USFL would be perfect for you.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just kind of wallowing there. You just you feel like you're just kind of spiraling. It's not really going anywhere. So
it's hard, man, because I've been at Giants camp all training camp, right? And, you watch guys that are really good football players. First, let's go back to the rookie mini camps where they bring in 90 rookies. So you got guys there, and I'm watching, guys maybe get a rep. How can I make the team if I don't get a rep? If I only get one rep, am I really getting evaluated on what I do in meetings? I thought we were supposed to be playing ball. And so it's hard for me to make an impact in 2 days on the field when I got one rep each day. Well, how am I supposed to break that down? And then, you fast forward to the training camp part. And so now you're seeing veteran guys. You see guys that are, long, athletic, can move, can play the ball well, but they're the ninth corner or they are the ninth pass rusher. And you like, this dude is not going to make the team, but he's good. And I've tried to ask, I've asked this, I've been covering the Giants since like 2014. So I've asked multiple head coaches this question just to get a straight answer. I got one straight answer from, Kyle Shermer or, I forgot his name, but Shermer, the head coach. But Dayball has been, well, the rules are the rules. What they say we can bring, because I always ask him the same question to a man. How would you rather bring your 90-man roster into a season? Because you're working with these guys, you get to know them, they can play or they wouldn't be on a 90-man roster, but you have to make cuts and you want to keep working with them, but you have to make cuts. And, so Dayball was like, yeah, if they say we can only keep 53, we keep 53. Shermer, Pat Shermer was like, man, I really wish I could work with a lot of these guys. And it's hard, to really move away from somebody that has talent, but doesn't have enough time to, I want to keep the 6 running back, but man, I got, 3 starters, a starter and 2 key backups. I can't keep this guy, but I know this guy is good. And so that's the frustrating part. And it also requires agents and players. And as a former college player, this is the hardest part of it. The humbleness to understand, man, maybe I should just go and do the USFL, go do the XFL. I think I'm talented. I think I'm pretty nice as a player, but I'm not Saquon Barkley. I could see the writing on the wall. I could see, I just want to go play because every year in football, it's like dog years, so by the time you get 26, you're like, geez, man, I've been busting my hump the whole off season to get on these rosters, and I'm not really getting opportunity. Now, this is back when I was in college. I feel like now in 2022, it's the best time to be a college football player because you have options. You have USFL, XFL, European League of Football, although they only could get 4 Americans, but you have 11-on-11 grass football that you can play. CFL is a unique game. It's a different game. I love the CFL, but it's a different game. And even some people take that opportunity to go up north, even with the ratio and everything like that. So it's a great time to be a college football player coming out. But I just hate that, some guys don't see it's hard for me as the media guy when I'm talking to these young players, like, hey, man, think about the USFL as a real option. Think about the XFL, man. It was like, oh, I'm hitting the league. Like, okay, I'm at. It's almost the same conversation I have with when I call high school games, right? And the parent is saying, oh, my kid's getting looked at from Ohio State, Miami, and Worcester. I'm like, ma'am, Worcester doesn't belong in this list of 3 with Ohio State in Miami. If Worcester is in the same conversation, then your kid is probably a D3 kid and not a kid that's Power 5. Or my kid's going to this insert Big Ten school, and I look at him like, man, I was a Division I running back. I know that's not what Big Ten looks like. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's hard to tell the athlete to really look at themselves and be honest with themselves. But that's why I'm hopeful that both leagues coexist. and both leagues continue to thrive.
No, I absolutely, yeah. It's just you're talking and getting the reps and stuff. It's like we're watching The Bachelorette. You got to be able to, you got to talk to the Bachelor to get the rose. You don't talk to him, you're never going to get the opportunity. So that's my contribution to that conversation. Everett, I really appreciate it. Extended time today on a Sunday. Really appreciate you taking time out. And I know it's crazy coming up with the NFL and everything in college sports. So thank you very much for your time today.
No, I appreciate you, Reed. Keep doing great work, man.
Well, I'm excited today. We have Eric Merrida joining us from the free agent FA Showcase, with John Murphy. Kind of people have been seeing all this posted online lately. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing great. Another day in paradise. Can't complain. Excited about next week. I feel good, man. Happy.
So this is the first of hopefully many of these, right? So we have a showcase coming Wednesday, September 14th. So we're getting this out Friday. It'll be Friday the 9th when this comes out. Going to be down in Sugar Land, Texas. Talk to me about kind of what is your guys' thesis behind, like, why are we doing this?
Well, the first thing is, me personally, the only way I can explain this is I'm pro player. I want to do this for the players. Honestly, I've been reaching out to teams probably the last 10 years about different guys. Some got more opportunities than others, and some never really got a shot. So instead of me sending emails with 4 guys or 3 guys or figuring out what position they need, I'm like, man, if I can get someone to show up from a scouting department, a decision maker, to see these guys in person, then why not do that? Because, highlights don't always tell the story. Game film, some people don't even take the time to really watch the game film or even the highlights. So some people really can stand out and show the work they put in person. So that was the whole method behind the madness. And I think it makes sense. And, let guys compete. And if there's other teams there, they're going to have to compete with each other too if somebody stands out. So that's what I want to create. There's nothing wrong with competition,
Well, it's an exciting time, I think, for alternative, non-NFL or players trying to get, if you're not on that roster, here we have CFL going strong, right? Now we have the USFL just completed this season, XFL. And it's like if people watched wrestling for years, having competing brands and wanting to get the best talent and be able to, scout that and pay for that and hold on to that is the best for everybody, and it's certainly the best for the players, and especially with the XFL here doing their showcases, not even being able to accommodate all the players that want it to be, right? Because there's a huge about just a huge thirst and demand for locations, things like this, for players to be able to showcase their skills.
Okay, so there's been a lot of variables that have kept guys out of some of the XFL showcases, for example. Obviously, there was a situation with the MLFB where players, unfortunately, were put out of their hotels right after practice, and they weren't able to get their things and whatnot. So there's about 200 or so players right there that didn't get an opportunity just because if they were on a roster at that point in time, they weren't allowed to attend a workout for another league, right? Of course, if the NFL called, they were able to go, but in regards to the XFL or anything like that, they didn't get an opportunity. So those players right there. There were a number of players this year in this year's draft class, some that will be attending the showcase, that were injured during the time of their pro day, so they weren't able to participate. Some of these guys are expected to run 4.3s and 4.4s, you know what I mean? And I'm sure if you connected with their film, they would have already had an opportunity, or maybe already had an XFL draft pool invite and whatnot, but they haven't been seen. And when you're a free agent and times are tough like this, you have to keep your name relevant. If not, you kind of fall to the wayside. Everybody was waiting on Tom Brady to figure out if he was going to come out of retirement or not, but everybody's not getting that type of love. That's a free agent that just grinded and, maybe was a second tier receiver at their school, but it maybe has a lot of ability, and just in the offense they weren't used properly, or whatever the case may have been, but they were a team guy. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we want good players. We want team guys that can come in and make an impact and be positive.
So what kind of players are you? And again, the hope is to have many of these, depending on, right, if there's interest, demand from, players to showcase. Who all is going to be, what types of players are going to be at the showcase next week?
Okay, so the main goal was if you have experience within the last 4 years of college for your draft class, for example, or with the professional team, preferably XFL, because there are going to be players most likely from the XFL 2020, and then USFL. If they're free agents and they haven't signed their contract yet, there will be some of those. And then some players that were in this year's draft class that even spent time with NFL teams will be there. So it's exciting for them because some of them only may have got a rookie minicamp chance, or they got a rookie minicamp chance, then they got another rookie minicamp chance, and then they got a contract, and then they were released, later, during that process. And, if you don't get to play in any preseason games, it's hard. It's really hard to make a practice squad or anything like that. It's almost a miracle just because there's so many guys putting out more film that's relevant and against good competition. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't have been good if they would have got that opportunity, right? So we want to make sure we get with the guns blazing, great competition, healthy competition in front of these scouts so they can make a decision.
Well, it's hard. So Emory Hunt's going to be on the same show as this. I talked with him. He works with players and scouting, and he's an analyst for college and all sorts of stuff. And that's what he's saying. You get some of these guys. They might be in the come into camp. They might get 1 touch or 2 touch in 3 days, and then it's like you're done. And it's like, how are you ever supposed to? You hear, oh, so and so got signed, or they're going to be there. I know us as all football fans, oh man, this is gonna be great. It's gonna blow out, and it's just not how it is all the time. And you get 2 shots, and then or maybe no shot. You might not even touch the ball when you're out. So
that's absolutely right. And I've had players in the past that they got 2 reps in practice. One of them was for a touchdown, and then it's time to play the game. They play 7 minutes in the fourth quarter as a wide receiver, and they run the ball on every play. And you block, but there's a lot of guys that can block, you know what I mean? But that doesn't mean you can run routes and catch the ball and everything like that. So you don't get a chance to prove everything because there's so many aspects to be an NFL player or an XFL player or USFL player or even an arena football, Canadian Football League player. You have to do so much and check so many boxes.
So who all are you guys going to have at the showcase in terms of scouts and people checking out the talent?
Okay, so obviously, I'm not able to disclose too much information, but I will say this. There will be eyes there from the CFL. They will be in the building. And then also the USFL will have reps there in attendance to evaluate players. And then, I know everybody's really excited about the possibility of like the XFL and everything being at the showcase. I am not able to disclose that information at this time, but for whatever players that show up, you will not be disappointed in the people that will be there. There are many other leagues, even Japan, the X League. I don't know if anyone knows about that. They pay a pretty penny out there. There's been players out there making about $100,000. The thing is, they don't allow more than 2 players to each team that are from the U.S., if I'm not mistaken. So they want the film. They want to see the footage, and they want to share it to other European leagues and whatnot. So, whoever comes out there will not be disappointed on who's there. And from a scouting and from a league standpoint, if the XFL shows up, they will not be disappointed on the talent we're going to have in the building. And the guys are really excited to show what they got. And man, I'm excited for them.
Talk about the importance of, like you said, advocate for the players here, guys trying to get, having these leagues exist, having these guys be able to get other opportunities, play, make money, support their families, not in the NFL.
Well, to me, first of all, there's a lot of money to be made from a player standpoint. Coming out of college, I mean, this, I graduated, and unless you have experience, there's not too many jobs that you can get unless it's sales. And a lot of these young men have no experience in sales, you know what I mean? And unless they're selling their Jordans or something like that, it's not really a bunch of education to prepare them for that first step out of college, right, out of school. So if you have the opportunity to play for a professional team, no matter what the league is, and you get to network with professional coaches, general managers, personnel people. And I always tell this, even when guys are in college, a guy might feel like he's a D1 player. I'm a Power 5 guy, right? and you're getting a scholarship from an FCS school, right? Or a Division II school, and you don't respond to the coach, you know? And I don't know if the guys pay attention, but Chip Kelly's at UCLA right now. But before that, where was he at? He was in the NFL. And before that, where was he at? He was at Oregon. And before that was New Hampshire. You know what I mean? Like, guys move up. Guys go from D3 to the NFL offices. It happens. So you never burn a bridge. Life is about connections. And that's why all these people that are coming to this event are coming, because if you have trusted relationships and positive people and you build a rapport with them, they're going to be there for you because they trust your judgment. So that's what's happening at this event. And that's why so many qualified individuals will be there from a professional standpoint and even from an athlete standpoint. I think it's huge.
I guess it shouldn't surprise me, but it always does, just how much demand there is and how many guys are all in on this. You know, we talked with the XFL, and they were doing the Arizona showcase, and they said, there was like 13 or 1,800 guys on the wait list that, it's like you can't even accommodate all this. And it's hard when you're trying to build these rosters, and we talk about, is there enough talent and is there whatever, like, there's still guys that fall through the cracks no matter, you're flying around and doing these things, you're in tech, like there's always guys. It just seems like there's always enough guys, head down, hustling, wanting to make it work. And it really is incumbent on, people like you and others that have the means to kind of run these things to be able to help figure that out. It's a really hard situation.
Yeah, it's really tough and it's unfortunate. And honestly, that's kind of how this window came about. I'm like, look, I'm helping too many people. I know other people that are trying to help too many people, and they need their players to get a look. For me as a former player, I was not a pro guy, right? I had a dream the other night about playing football. I pulled my hamstring in my dream chasing the post route, okay? That's how much I still want to play, and I was in high school in this dream. I have dreams about it all the time. But the thing is, the opportunities are so limited, and most players, if they're given a fair shot, to see if they're good enough, to see if they can survive in this league or these leagues. And if they were given that fair shot, they would be willing to accept it if they didn't make it. But they can't accept if they never get that opportunity. So that's why anxiety, depression, all that is real about this game when someone tells you no, especially when you never have that true opportunity to showcase your ability and your talent. And that's really, I just like, man, can I get these guys one shot? Can you come out here and watch these young men and look at them and tell me that they're not good enough? Because once they do that and you do that, they can understand, they can accept it, and they can move on and see what they want to do next. But I guarantee you, there's going to be guys that are going to be offered contracts from this event. You know what I mean? I guarantee it. Because I know I've seen the players. I've been watching guys for a long time. I've seen a lot of guys make it. I've seen a lot of guys that didn't make it for one issue or one situation. So it's huge.
Well, it is hard, and it's something like we saw like Kevontae Turpin here. You got Pat. You try like guy had to work for however many years to come through to get, but it proves that ultimately talent can win out if you're someone that has that ability. I think it's good that you guys are working and with you and John Murphy. People, with the connections, because like I get hit up all the time online. Hey, here's my tape, or can you send this out, or retweet my highlight reel? It's like I don't know what that does anything. I think working with you guys, Showcase, coming out, having trusted individuals there, scouts, putting this together. I mean, I think that's the way you got to do it. I know it's like $100 to register for that, but you got to look at where you're kind of putting your eggs here and figure out what's worth it. But I see all the time guys retweeting everything online, and I just don't know what that does. Yeah.
So social media, it's I guess a blessing and a curse, right? If you, for like Kevontae Turpin, just that story, there's so many guys like him, right, that knew they were good enough. They just needed a shot, right? But for whatever reason, they had to go to a league that maybe they didn't feel they should be playing in, right? And it's nothing against that league, but just like guys coming out of high school and they want to go to Power 5. There's so many players. I talked to an XFL coach like 2 weeks ago, and he's like, right now, you want me to look at this player? I have 1,400 guys that are already on my list, so I'll get to them. I'll look at them, but it's going to take me a while. You know what I mean? Why is this guy that important that I need to watch over the other 1,400 that I still have to check out? You know what I mean? So it's so much, but my thing is this. I've had players go to these workouts, to these showcases, to these camps, and I'm not here to speak about anybody else's business, but sometimes it's just a money grab, right? And I want guys to be able to be seen by these people and be picked up. You know, I don't want you going to another workout after this. I want you to be like, man, 3 different leagues offered me a contract, or 2 leagues offered me a contract, and one's interested, and they told me that they'll draft me. You know what I mean? I want this. I want substance behind this. I want these guys to really get a fair opportunity to be seen doing their 40, doing their 5-10-5, getting their official measurements, and competing one-on-ones. So that's my goal, man, and that's what's going to happen. It's destined, you know. So
it's coming that Wednesday, Sugar Land, Texas. This is the first one of these. You know, information's online. I think your guys' Twitter is good for that FA Showcase.
Yes.
We'll put the links and everything else on there. Obviously, you're still looking for guys up until that. Anything else before I let you go? I really appreciate you taking time today to come on before you have all your other work you have to do.
Oh man, there's so much. I could talk to you forever. Just really excited. Like I said, we're open to going to other locations as long as there are a good amount of players. There's CFL scouts, USFL teams that are interested in different areas. So we're open to do it wherever, whenever, however. We're flexible. We're taking all sponsorships, promotion, whatever's going to help the cause. You know, because at the end of the day, the more quality people there, the better opportunities for these young men, and the better chances for them to succeed in life. Because, you know, one day football will be over from a playing standpoint. And there's so much more to life than just being in between those lines, right? So I want to make sure that these guys get a chance to build relationships and build a positive futures for the next generations. And hopefully they won't have to do these anymore. You know what I mean? So.
Well, I'm really curious, you know, as we've never really lived through the spring football off season, right? Now we are with USFL, but, you know, before with that, you know, XFL, everything else.
Yeah.
How it kind of looks like, because it felt like, you know, we did our USFL draft show back when they had the draft, you know, back in, what was that, March or whatever the hell before the season. You know, now XFL is coming back. They're doing, and, you know, we're inviting some 2020 people if you were a part of it, you know, coming back. But it seems like there was this pent up, all these guys that have been kind of screwed over the last 3 years right now. And I'm curious, as we continue to go here now, year 2 USFL, year 1 XFL, you know, presumably we continue. What does that look like in terms of, you know, trying to keep finding new guys that, you know, maybe I felt like there was just a bunch of, not retreads, but you know, we're still Brandon Silvers. Okay, he's coming around. They're coming around. We're talking to all these guys. So I'll be curious to see what new faces emerge from the work you guys are doing and others as part of this.
I fully agree and I fully understand. And honestly, what COVID did to a lot of situations, you know, I don't know if you remember when the XFL was going to play that last game that was canceled due to COVID. It was going to be the most televised sporting event probably in the last who knows how many years, because it was the event, the only one left, right? And they couldn't do it. And honestly, I feel like if they played that one game, they may never stop because it was rolling, right? But it's just crazy that the opportunities are slim. But I think now they're finally starting to get through some of those COVID classes. And I think over this time period, now these guys that came out in this year's draft class suffered because there were so many players in this year's draft class, 2022, due to COVID, due to the extra years, due to the transfer portal, due to guys sitting out a year and then coming back to play. So it was a little overlap of talent. So I think 2023, things will start clearing up. But as of right now, it's still a mosh pit. And there's so many guys that didn't even get a chance. You know what I mean? Oh, man, I was an all-conference player. And I was on the emergency list for the USFL, you know, the last 4 games of the season. And I played in a great conference. Well, what did I do wrong? You know? Well, I don't really have an answer for him. You didn't do anything wrong. Have you kept working? Are you ready? Come out here, show it, prove it, and let's kick the door in. Because now, because of guys like Cavante Turpin and players from the USFL, you've seen, was it 20, 30 guys got picked up from the USFL. That's just the USFL. You think that number's not going to go up for next year? So we need to get in these leagues right now, right? And the XFL, you know what's going to happen, right? It's gonna be big time. Mr. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is doing big things. You know what I mean? And they had a ton of guys at their showcases. And if they would have had one in 50 states, they probably still would have had over 100 guys at each of the workouts. And I'm pretty sure there would have been at least 10 guys there that could ball. You know what I mean? But some of those guys will never get a look. And you know, I had a player that was going to a workout and his flight was delayed because, you know, how cancellations have been during that time period. And he couldn't get in contact with the team or personnel because, you know, it was all email at that point in time. And luckily for him, they had private workouts, but they can only manage so many guys. You know what I mean? In there, and he's happy and blessed that he got another opportunity. He wants to come to this, but he can't make this one. You know what I mean? So what's the next one? What's the next one? You know what I mean? So it's rough, but if guys are willing to just keep working and stay ready and be willing to do these workouts, be willing to play in other leagues to get to their main goal, whatever their goal may be, I feel like the door's open. The door's open. But don't sell yourself short by not wanting to play and going to take a job at Subway. Nothing wrong with Subway on the side. You know what I mean? But don't turn down your dreams without giving it your full 100% go. You know what I mean? So I had a friend that was a backup quarterback in the Arena Football League that went directly to the 49ers. You know what I mean? So it's never what you think it's going to be. Everyone's path is different, right? And just because there's a little bit of adversity in your life, which we've all experienced in our own type of way, you can't give up at the first line of defense. You got to keep fighting. You got to keep pushing. So.
Well, Eric, I think you did a good job today selling. I really appreciate your time. Look forward to it and talking with you guys in the future and helping to promote everything else. I think it's wonderful. Players need to have opportunities presented like you guys are doing. So thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, it's an honor. I appreciate it. I'm excited. And everybody that's helping out with the event, thank you so much. We're going to have 7 Seeds barbecue in the house, serving the players after. They don't have to worry about paying anything like that. Section 28 helping us with the gear, merchandise, athlete innovations. Former assistant trainer for the Cincinnati Bengals will be out there with us as well. We've got scouts from the Hula Bowl in attendance and making things happen, the director of operations. So it's just a great look, a lot of good people, and we just want to make it happen for these young men.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm excited today. The Elks are kind of like the second team of the Markcast. Obviously, the BC Lions #1, but we have David Boles here, 6:30 sideline reporter for the Elks. How are you doing today, sir?
Very well, Reed. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, busy day outside of CFL football, but now obviously, you know, RIP the Queen and everybody over in the UK mourning that. But we do still have a Markcast episode to put out tomorrow in the CFL season to play. So yeah, we'll move forward.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So curious with you, first time having you on, lots of stories right now, the Elks not being able to get everything together. Obviously we have the Vernon Adams stuff going on, everything in Montreal. What is to you kind of the biggest thing you're paying attention to in the CFL right now?
There's two things. Obviously, me being the sideline reporter for the Elks, obviously focused on my team right here in the Alberta capital. And I think there's a couple different storylines with this team. Obviously, there's been the trade of Dave Beard recently, the long-time Elk stud on the line there. And it seems like this team is definitely preparing for next year while looking forward to a bit of a youth movement, having Jesse Gibbons being brought in from Hamilton via trade and looking at what they have in Trey Ford if he's able to come back this year, and seeing the growth in Taylor Cornelius' game as well, seeing the evolve. The steps this team has taken this year has certainly been a thing that I've been impressed by. I'm wanting to see too. But in terms of the other sideline, it's been the Hamilton storyline. Sorry, it's been the Hamilton Tiger Cats, because this is a team that went to the Grey Cup the last 2 years and lost to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers last year, if you may recall, in pretty heartbreaking fashion. And now this year we're looking at a ball club that is 3-9. So it's a bit. That one's kind of surprised me, because I don't think Orlando Steinauer by any means is a bad coach. As a matter of fact, I think he's a great coach. It's just very perplexing to me see the Tiger Cats, a team that is, played great football last year, just have this little drop off. And I mean, obviously maybe an anomaly year. We'll see what happens, but it's definitely been one of the bigger headlines for me, seeing a team that's been so competitive to get into such a funk.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, CFL, so last season, that was our first season covering all this stuff. I was there. I was in Hamilton, and I really did think that, I mean, they seemed like they could win. You know, they had the Rouge Point and all of that, and a couple things go the other way. But to live through me thinking that, hey, Hamilton is a force to be reckoned with here, and then to see how divergent the paths are right now with Winnipeg seemingly keeping up with everything they've had, as much as they've had to claw their way through a bunch of these games, Hamilton has really just fallen apart, especially with Dane Evans, which I really thought they were in good shape with coming out of the season.
Well, and you touched on Winnipeg, too, is that I was talking about with some of the fellas here in Edmonton. I mean, the Bombers last year were just marching to the beat of their own drum and just, putting up a demolishing offense, whereas I'm going to look at the game they played here in Edmonton, where they didn't exactly light the world on fire offensively. I mean, Zach Collaros only completed 7 passes, but they still picked up a W. It seems to me, and having watched them in Regina too, even on the Sunday for the Labor Day game, it doesn't seem like the Bombers are just so much destroying teams like they did last year, or just kind of obliterating them. It's the old adage of, like we see in every sport, is when you've got your foot on it, you got your foot down, don't let off. Is that we've seen the Bombers get a little bit of daylight and then break back into it, and then they've obviously been able to. I mean, that's what good teams do. They close out wins, or they find ways to win, and you've certainly got to give the Bombers credit for doing that. But I mean, it's just from Hamilton's perspective, it's just weird to see a team like we talked about go from such a strong performance, be such a strong offensive competitor, to being one that's very. Still putting up those good numbers, but they're still looking at a 3-9 record. And at the end of the day, I mean, that's not a record that's exactly have you in the playoffs. And the Elks too, I think at 3-9 are looking at next year, as we've talked about as well.
Do you think that was always the plan in Edmonton, that, hey, we're going to get Chris Jones in, we're going to do all this, or is it now we're halfway? I know we're really looking to next year here at this point.
My impressions when they hired Jones, I've talked about with some of the guys here too, is that I never expected this to sort of be a makeover overnight. Something that was going to be done as like first game of the year, bang, we know something drastically different from last year. It's a process. And we've heard Coach Jones talk about it too on occasions, is that things take time. You got to build up, get the right roster. And there's been, even from last year when I was in the PA booth, there's been a lot of change, and you can certainly see positive strides being made on the Elks offensive line and Elks defensively as well. Is that it's not going to be the 1 year everything gets done in a matter, but it's building for the future. And we're seeing that with Trey Ford having a more active sort of dynamic running game from the quarterback position. They're still trying to find that right balance at running back. They've gone through a few of them. Sherman Beatty, I think it was James on the weekend, who had a couple great runs. Taylor Cornelius showing us some ability. So there's certainly strides being made. I always think this was going to be a couple years project. They weren't going to reinvent the wheel overnight.
How big of a derailing factor do you think Trey Ford's injury was?
I don't know if it was necessarily a derailing factor, but I would have been curious from my end to see how he would have fared had he been able to have more time in the slot. As you know there, Reed, the more time you have to practice, the more time you get comfortable in an offensive scheme, the more time you have to practice, the more familiar you develop that chemistry with your receivers. I mean, helps too when you have two pretty good receivers in Jarrell Walker and Kenny Lawler. But I would have been very curious to see how he would have developed that rapport with his receivers in practice and be able to work with such talented guys like that, and help maybe get the offensive rolling. Are they in a different position? Hard to say, but it would have been very cool to see that kind of mobility and skill as the Elks march down the field in the various games they would have had him for.
Is this, it's weird, we know Cornelius, he was in the XFL and then played, had some playtime last year with Edmonton and then obviously this year. And I just can't ever figure out, like, are the Elks, are we behind, Cornelius? Is this just a fill gap while we're waiting for Trey Ford? I mean, it was weird to me that we spend all this money on Kenny Lawler in the offseason, highest paid receiver, and I'm like, who is throwing him the ball? It's like buying a Ferrari and parking out front of like a trailer park. It's like, what are we doing with this?
I think there's certainly a level of trust with Taylor Cornelius. I mean, even from last year, the guy's grown immensely. Like, the thing that struck me when I first met the guy is he's a tall dude. I mean, 6'5". He's not a shrinking violet. And just watching him the few times I've had to in practice, I've had the opportunity to in practice and even during games, the guy's got a gun for an arm. He can just sit there and let it go. And there doesn't really look like there's a lot of force. And even this year, I'm seeing him run the ball more, which wasn't something I saw. We saw a whole lot of last year under Jamie Elizondo, or even at certain points earlier this year. So I think there is a rapport developed there because in an interview that Wilder did, James Wilder Jr., not James Wilder, pardon me, Kenny Lawler did, he goes, my plan simple. My quarterback can get me the ball. I'm going to go catch it. And I mean, it's a pretty decent theory because there's been times where I've watched Cornelius just sit there and all he has to do is just sit there. And if he gets time in the pocket, he can rip it. And I mean, that's all your receivers want. You can get them the ball, let them take care of the rest. And he's certainly got the arm strength and the skill to do it. And as we saw even last week in Calgary at the Labor Day Classic, certainly got the mobility there too with Jalen Marshall's touchdown.
Just curious, I think Farhan was reporting that, Trey Ford can come back like next week, so he's eligible the week after. Just curious, do we really just go all in on him, try to develop him for next year? I'll just be curious to see what the game plan is here for Edmonton down the stretch.
I could see them sort of rotating him in and out with Cornelius kind of giving them a shot because they're 3-9 right now, and obviously there's still a few games to go. And Coach Jones is an extremely competitive fella, and obviously everyone in pro football is competitive. You want to have your chance to win every week. I can see scenarios where they give Ford a chance to get the ball as well as Cornelius. Ford does look a little more bit of an athlete. Ford, where he's more of a maverick. He runs the ball. Sort of got that Vernon Adams Jr. feel to him in the few games I've seen him. So I can see scenarios where they rotate him in and out for running plays, kind of throwing a little trickery to the offense. It's very much, it seems like we said, a bit of a looking forward point to next year, but I'd be curious to see if that is the scenario where they sort of mix the two in for starts or kind of mix Ford into more in-game scenarios and add a little bit of a new, let's say, texture to that Elks offense.
What do you make? I know I can't remember what it was about. I saw Victor posting this week. Victor Quee about it was the re-up party or come something get your season tickets next year. And I saw a lot of comments like a lot of expletives, a lot of bad words, a lot of things about not renewing our tickets so we're supposed to win. But it's like it's not an overnight thing. I mean, people are still blaming the name stuff, which is just crazy. I can't even wrap my head around that. But what do you make of just the mentality of Edmonton's fan base right now?
I think it's certainly an interesting thing, but I like where Victor's coming from, though, because, I mean, yeah, the home team, the Elks have won the Elks Edmonton football team hasn't won a home game in 1,000+ days. And yes, there was Corona that's affected it. And I mean, there are some people who have their grievances with whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, I mean, I like what he's doing because you've got to, in some ways, you've got to be able to branch out and reach new people who maybe they weren't a fan of the game, but you've got to reach out to fans and say, hey, you know what? Maybe we didn't get it right before. We want to have you back. And if there's anything you can do, you're engaging people. And at the end of the day, if people want to tell you their thoughts, however it may be, you're getting feedback and you're engaging them. You're getting them maybe care about something or offer an opinion on something they may not have had to otherwise. So it's good seeing what Victor's doing because it's something we do need more of in sports. People who can maybe in a higher up position reach out and connect with the fan base. And that's how you grow the game at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, they got a tough stretch down here. Stamps coming in, then going to Saskatchewan. They look like they're kind of hitting a little bit more now. And then obviously the bye week and then the Alouettes. I mean, it'll just be curious. I mean, I don't know. I never know how you approach the end of the season that way. You're on the sub 500 and are we... do we just go for broke or try to rebuild? I mean, BC's going the other way, bringing in Vernon and really trying to make a run out of it right now. We'll be curious to see what they decide to do in Edmonton.
Yeah, the BC game, I'm curious. So obviously, I mean, Nathan Rourke's not there. And I mean, Rourke's sort of been, prior to his injury, everyone was looking, probably had the run for the most outstanding Canadian, but he was, I think it's safe to say he was in the conversation for most outstanding player. I mean, he was that good. So it depends if Michael O'Connor, plays and how well BC's offense adjusts. I mean, obviously more games against Saskatchewan, that could be interesting. The Elks held them pretty tight here. The Calgary one should be interesting because in the two games they played against the Stamps, it's not like they've gotten blown out in Calgary. Like the first game of the year, they hung pretty tough. There was, if I remember correct, there's a Bo Levi Mitchell deep ball towards the end of the second half when the Elks had a little momentum that kind of really, I don't want to say sealed the deal, but it got close enough to it that it might be splitting hairs. And even last week, the Elks held them in check pretty close right to the final whistle where that Rene Paredes missed field goal towards the end of the fourth quarter really allowed Edmonton to have their final shot at the deal. So I don't think they're going to go down without a fight. And it's good because you want to see a competitive football team week in and week out. And I strongly expect on any Chris Jones team and any professional football team that they're going to give the fans something to watch at least until the very end of the season.
What do we talked Hamilton. What are you looking at in the East here? I mean, I was, like I said, I was on the Alouettes flight deck. We're talking Montreal, lost a lot of steam here the last couple of weeks. Hamilton. Toronto seems to be the only one that can really kind of get anything together there. Ottawa, right? I mean, what do you make of the East?
The East is interesting because it seemed to me that at least it used to be a lot stronger. But I mean, the Argos to me are a bit of an interesting one because there's a lot of talent there. McLeod Bethel Thompson certainly evolved as a quarterback. And I mean, Dane Evans has not quite been himself this year. I think it's fair to say, but I think obviously with the Argos leading the East, you've got to keep an eye on them. And that's from where I'm coming at is they've got a capable running game. They look like they've got a pretty good quarterback who, when he's on, is capable of at least leading that offense. It's just a matter of consistency because the Argos have had a few wins over Saskatchewan. I think 3 today, 2 or 3, if I'm about right. It's just a matter for me of seeing if they consistently string it together. And I mean, Montreal did manage. They're the only team to beat Winnipeg this season. So I've got to give them, I have to give them a sharp look, but it's just a consistency thing for the East. If I can see a consistent play from both the Argos and the Owls, then maybe that changes the complexion of the battle out East a little more. And then whoever the crossover team is, possibly out West. But if BC or Toronto are able to string together some consistent performances, build up some W's towards the end of the season, it'd be a very, very interesting dynamic we have heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I really thought the Owls had a lot of momentum, and then obviously the Gary Stern of it all, and with Vernon now going, and it just the winds of fortune changed so much over the course of like 72 hours there. Like I thought they were kind of my team in the East. I thought they were going to make a run for it. They put Winnipeg, gave them the W or the L there, but it just doesn't seem like anyone, like you said, can get any consistency going in the East right now.
Yeah, and that's sort of the thing is, like, I mean, Trevor Harris, too, he looks like a pretty good quarterback, and it's the Danny Machocha system. I think that's more of Danny Machocha's guy. But it's just the weird thing out there is it's the East is sort of kind of confounded by expectations a bit because I thought the Arc would be a solid team. Thought the Owls could be a pretty good team after what we saw from Vernon Adams Jr. at points last year. And I thought the Ticats were good, as we've mentioned, sort of just kind of emerge as the class of the East and then give the Bombers perhaps another threat or what it may be. But sort of the way everything's shaped down, even with Ottawa not having, despite the fact they let him solely in the offseason and Jalen Acklin, it's been a bit of a expectation confounding and sort of befuddling shakedown of the East, but it's still fun football. I mean, those some of the best games, like there was that Ottawa Montreal game, the 40-33 game they had a couple of weeks back, was one of the best games this season. I mean, pretty close to even those Calgary Winnipeg battles as well that have been separated by a touchdown or a last minute play. That
is almost some more exciting games this year. I mean, I get too stressed when it comes to BC playing anyone, but that Calgary Winnipeg kind of back and forth there, and now with Jake Mayer. I mean, do you? We had Jake on preseason. I was really high on him because I had always said he was kind of my Calgary quarterback last year because we came in and Bo was hurt, and I'm like, who the hell is this? The Mayer that's kind of running shop here, but now he's come out. I mean, I don't know if we see Bo the rest of the season. I mean, what do you make of all the Calgary stuff going on?
I'm intrigued by the Calgary quarterback scenario because it seems to me that maybe we've been down this road before because Nick Arbuckle a couple of years back is that Arbuckle came in, looked pretty good in that Calgary system, and he got kind of that, I'd say, adulation. And then he's gone on to forge his own path in the CFL. Then we saw Bo come back. But I like what Mayer showed. Like he looked pretty comfortable in that game versus Edmonton. He was sitting back in the pocket. He was making good, accurate throws, and he didn't look flummoxed by it all. It's the only analogy I've got here is it seems to me like the Stampeders just pumping out quarterbacks the way the Red Wings used to, put out defensemen. It's just this consistent line of talent that you just look at and go, wow. It's genuinely, it's quite interesting that they've been able to mine this much talent. I mean, Bo Levi Mitchell's still. I mean, you got what he's done for Calgary is pretty good, but when you look at Jake Mayer, I mean, it doesn't look like the Stampeders are sitting on a bad backup option whatsoever, possibly even start of the future stuff.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, when you saw that last year, and because there was all these concerns with Bo and his leg and everything, and you thought, man, whatever happens, I mean, they're set here for the next however long. I mean, especially once they, extended Mayer's contract and all that, it's like they're really, it just speaks testaments to the coaching and the management and everyone they have over there, keeping everyone in check.
Certainly, yeah. And A good coach can certainly make or break a team. And obviously we're seeing that with a lot. I think there's the coaching in the CFL is obviously awesome. Like I've had a lot of respect for whoever I've supported in the past and even now in Edmonton. I mean, always had a lot of respect for the work Coach Jones did when he was here, when he was in Toronto, when he was with Stampeders, when he was now and was with the Riders, sorry. And I mean, looking at the leadership in Calgary, I mean, Dave Dickinson, if you're Jake Mayer, there's not too many better guys to learn the art of quarterbacking from than one of the best players in recent memory to ever hold that position in Dave. So it's certainly good to see young quarterbacks thrive in this league. I mean, as a Canadian, it's always nice seeing, young Canadian talent thrive. And hopefully going forward in the league with guys like Trey Ford, with guys like Nathan Rourke, we can continue to see young fellas from this country continue to emerge and show that they are capable talents at the highest level.
Moving into the rest of the season here, we're at like week 14, which was crazy. I was recording my promo this morning. I thought, God, I can't believe we're already week. Like, what the hell is happening here? What are you looking forward to the rest of the season? East, West, kind of however you want to slice it before I let you go.
I would say, obviously, I'm going to look at it the hometown angle, and I got to say, the big one for me is seeing how this week specifically, seeing how the Banjo Bowl goes in Winnipeg versus Saskatchewan. And then the one I really want to see is the Calgary versus Edmonton game here at Commonwealth Stadium, because the first game I'm going to talk, we'll start with the Calgary game because that was a close game. And I mean, just listen to the call we had on Ched with Morley Scott and Dave Campbell. I mean, that was a very good football game, tightly contested, smart football. And I mean, it was athletic. It was fun. It was sort of what you want to see on Labor Day. I want to see if that can be brought back to here because, as mentioned, the Elks, we haven't won a home game here at Commonwealth in 1,000+ days. What a time to break that streak versus your rival in the Battle of Alberta. So I mean that's the big game for me, and the other one is the Banjo Bowl. So I was at the Labor Day game in Regina, and the Riders got out to a fast start, and then as I mentioned, you don't let good teams up when you've got them down. It just seemed like the Bombers kept getting themselves back into it, and I'm curious to see how that Dickinson offense adjusts. And curious to see how that defense adjusts now without Garrett Marino, with him being released, because I mean, obviously he's run into a few matters of controversy this season. I'm curious to see how Winnipeg responds to perhaps the hit that was leveled on Collaros that has been seen as controversial, and see how the Riders rebound from, giving up a lead and seeing the offense sort of go away on them in that second half that maybe they could have had some opportunities to not see go.
I guess, and I hadn't addressed the Garrett Marino thing either, and we might as well just talk about it here for a quick second. I had people, first of all, incredible the amount of traction that late hit he had on Collaros got on Twitter. That I think one of I had tweeted Monday morning that Ticats fan account with 197 followers, the video of that late hit at the time had like 97,000 views, whereas the CFL tweeting the game-winning field goal, whatever, from that game with however many 250,000 subscribers had 30,000 views. I thought this is not the kind of attention that the CFL wants here. I'm so glad that the Riders did the right thing. Ambrosi did the right thing with the memo coming out and saying, I have the right to revoke, any of these contract signs. Any thoughts on the Garrett Marino? And I cannot believe how much that blown up Saturday, Sunday, and the Monday.
I genuinely think that I don't necessarily know what to make, because I don't want to judge a guy's actions, because obviously I don't know what he's like off the field, but there was so much leading up to it. There was obviously the what happened was Jeremiah Masoli first. Now, if I can remember correct, there was another incident throughout the year that happened in practice, something like that, and then there was this, and obviously things build, and that's what it led to. But I was in the stadium, and when that hit delivered, the thing that just kind of caught me is when he put his hands up, and I just thought instinctively went, yeah, I don't necessarily know if that's going to absolve you per se. So it's amazing that's what, because like you said, it's not what you want attracted to. You want people saying, oh, this is the play for this. You mean, so Kenny Lawler made a great catch, or look at that pick Duron Carter made there. It was awesome. Or look at that throw by Collaros. God, he can move and run, and he can run and throw on the run. So obviously the Riders did what they had to do, and the CFL responded in their fashion. But hopefully going forward, that if there is stuff the league can bring attraction to, it's more great plays, and the fact that there are, as we mentioned, young Canadian talent succeeding, that we're seeing clubs like the Argos come up and build themselves up to a great level, and that, the Bombers might very well go for a three-peat. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of great storylines in the league, and hopefully we'll see more of those storylines emerge as we go on.
No, I hated it. I had people, say to me like, "Well, isn't this what like the media like? Isn't this what you want? Like more?" I said, absolutely not. Like I would never like ever advocate, anyone getting hurt, whether it was intentional or not, in any sort of way to draw more attention to this. I just thought it was so poor. When Marino came back against the Lions, he had he was trying to head dive into Lucky Whitehead on the first play back from his suspension. And I'm glad that this was handled, and I think that it was a bad look. And I'm glad that universally Twitter seemed to come together at the end and say this was a good move.
Yeah, I saw it. I was going back to my hotel at the time, and I try not to use Twitter too much, take it for what it is. But I was looking at it going, the comment section can always be a bit of a minefield, and everyone seemed to be in condemnation of it. Even there were folks in the stands at Mosaic who kind of, I can remember seeing their reaction, and I kind of remember one guy going, "Oh, that's not great," and he was a diehard Bomber fan. There were some. It's a mix. It's a good mix. You got a lot of people coming in from Winnipeg for the game, and the one guy beside me, just the Bomber flag, the Bomber jersey, like proud Manitoba guy. All I heard him go was, didn't like that, and that's kind of thought, okay, let's keep an eye and see if that's a common reaction. And it did seem to sort of play out that way on Twitter, although in much harsher forms than, it's just a gritted teeth and a sigh.
Yeah, I hadn't even tagged him in anything, and I got blocked by Garrett Merrida. I said, if only Garrett was as soft on the field as he was on Twitter, then maybe we wouldn't be in this conundrum to begin with. So.
Oh my.
Anything else before I let you go? Really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, big game this weekend. I keep an eye on Calgary just because of everything going on with BC and kind of what we have going on right now, because I think Winnipeg is far and away, one in the division, but like to be competitive there. Any other thoughts before I let you go?
I wouldn't say so. I just think it's been a pretty interesting season. I mean, this is the first full year we've had out of COVID in the CFL, and it's nice to see people. I mean, in a year where it didn't play, and there was questions possibly about the league's ability to survive that, it's just good to see people still coming out in Canada, still actively devoted to football, and still making sure that this league is being paid attention to. And I mean, there's been plenty of games where we've seen that, hey, this game is going to be okay. I mean, obviously those Calgary Winnipeg thrillers. There's been a couple of games with the Elks where I just thought, wow, this is good stuff. And 27 unanswered points in Montreal where they've put up. So it's just good in general to see people not only invest in the success of the CFL, but invest in success now and down the line, both in terms of what they see on the field and how they're building the game going forward.
Well, David, I really appreciate your time. Say hi to Morley and Dave Campbell. I think Dave was our first ever Canadian media person to ever come on our show back last year with all the XFL talks and everything else going on. So I go long back with the Edmonton and all your guys' team over at 630 Chat. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, sir. Certainly pass on that hi to Dave, and very much appreciate you invite me on, Reed. Look forward to joining you again somewhere down the line.
Thanks.
Take care, my man. Cheers.
Want to thank all our guests today. Emory for coming on, sharing lots of time. Like I said, extended interview ahead of him, being swamped with work for the next, God knows, 20, however many weeks here with NFL and college football, all that other stuff. Really appreciate Emory coming on. Really appreciate Eric Merrida as well, taking time out before he's going to work. We're all just like, the players here, everyone's kind of working, getting their things in, trying to do what we can. Any player wants to come on, share their story. Happy to have that as well. If we have anyone checking that out today because of the work, the interview that we did with Eric talking about the work that they are doing here coming up next week and then in the future with more showcases. I really appreciate David as well coming on talking CFL. Like I said, I was talking on the Alouettes Fight Tech podcast this week. CFL is so fascinating to me to talk about just because of, sometimes the games are a little slow, sometimes a little sleepy, but nothing beats a good pre-game CFL discussion in my book, just in terms of all the potential possibilities that you can run through with the quarterbacks and player switching and the teams and their histories and the divisions and everything else. Really think it's fascinating. Working on, I had, my big back pocket guest working on maybe next week. We'll see. It's been a lot of messages, text messages, everything sent this week. Doing my best for that. working very hard to bring you guys some really good content that you will be excited about. Regardless, I have a really good show next week, booked a CFL guest as well, so that should be good. But, it'll see. It's kind of flying by the seat of our pants here. We get an XFL stuff, or we not? Who's going to be available to talk? But as always, I have the next couple weeks here booked out, at least CFL-wise, so it should be good. Like and subscribe. Be tuned in for that. I have another big returning guest here, I think, in 2 weeks coming on. So like and subscribe, be a part of the 2,500 subscriber giveaway. I think I've rambled a long time today, so really appreciate all your guys' love and support. Hope you like the new webcam. I got a new webcam, but the lighting's all weird today, but I think it's balanced out all right. It's supposed to track my head if I move too far around, but looks good. Hopefully we sound good. Thank you guys all so much. Like and subscribe. See you next time.